This episode is brought to you by JT Clothiers. Hi, I'm Chad Hennings, and this is Forces of Character Podcast. My guest this week is a former teammate and friend, Dat Nguyen. And for those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with Dak's background, this is a young man who's really truly lived out the American dream. His family came over from Vietnam, post-Vietnam conflict, was born in a refugee center, raised in Rockport, Texas, became a Texas A&M Aggie great. We'll get a chance to maybe chat about what the heck happened with the Aggies this season. But played for the Dallas Cowboys, was an all-pro, and now is an owner and operator of Chick-fil-A franchises. But Dat, man, appreciate you being on here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Wow, it's an honor to be here, Chad. It's always in your presence, man. Thank you very much for being part of this.
You know, before we kick this thing off, reading your background, I always knew we were brothers from a different mother, man. But I didn't realize high school, and I'm thinking, I want you to guess, and I know there's no way anybody's out there going to guess. What football accolade in high school did we share that probably nobody else could even figure out?
Maybe a punter, all-state punter?
All-state punter.
Oh, you were a punter,
yeah.
Yeah.
All-state
My
punter.
boy just asked me this the other day. Go, Dad, you didn't get any accolades for linebacker in the state of Texas, but a punter? You punt? I had a good soccer coach that came over and taught me how to kick a football. That's a soccer ball, so.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When I read that, I thought, no way. Because, that's actually, I ranked higher on all-state accolades as a punter than I did I was a tight end.
It's funny you said that, because I got selected in the state of Texas. They picked all the high school players that are seniors to come and play a game every summer right before the coaches clinic.
Yeah.
And I was selected as a punter. So I met all of these great players in the state of Texas, but I was a special team player. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Awesome. Well, man, it's been 25 years since I retired. Since we were teammates together, the Cowboys. I mean, I don't want to go there really, but I was just thinking prior to our conversation here of, I don't know if you even recall the conversations you and I would have on the bus, going to and from the games, just picking your brain, asking you questions about your background, kind of just who you are as a person. And I tell you, you impressed me back then, and even how you've lived your life, followed through with, continuing your awesome career with the Cowboys, but what you did post and how you lead your family as a husband, as a father, as a member of the community. Man, kudos to you.
Well,
You've done a great job.
Well, you're a big example of why, Chad. All of you guys, as a young player coming to the league, I didn't know how to be a professional. Obviously, you are a collegiate player. I went through the whole process. But I remember those bus rides, and I can remember, Chad, I remember that one preseason game. It was the second preseason game after we played the opening game at the in Canton. Remember the Cleveland Brown came back, and we did the introduction in the following week. I think we were in the second game, and I remember I sat next to you, and I was like, does this game slow down? I was like, man, it was so fast, that first game, in the preseason game that I played against Cleveland. And I was like, golly, this is unbelievable. Because, you play football, you play high school to college. It's a little bit, the step up a little bit. And then as the game goes on, your experience gets a little better and it slows down. And then when I got that first introduction to that first preseason game, I was like, I don't know, I'm fast enough to play this game. And I remember you recalled you saying in the bunch of that, it will slow down, so it's okay. It's okay.
Just be cool. Yeah, no, and you make a great point, and one of the things I try to do is kind of draw analogies and points to other phases of life. I said that same thing to myself when I was flying jets. When you first started flying, fighters, it's like, man, it's just elbows and just everything in the cockpit trying to keep up what's going on, and eventually it slowed down. But that's life. Can you draw any experience from that to any other phases of your life where you first start off, maybe as a Chick-fil-A franchise owner, where it finally slow down and you get into that groove?
Even as a father, the Chick-fil-A was I tell people all the time, it's a great profession that I get the chance to do every day. all this I do is mentor kids. But yes, we do sell chicken. But I didn't know any about the chicken business. I didn't know any about running a restaurant. My family grew up in the restaurant business. I was a bus boy. I washed dishes, but didn't know how to run an operation. And I felt like the first 45 days, I felt like a fire hydrant was in my face every morning I woke up. And then I tell you, in the slowdown in the system, I'm here with you today because I'm able to walk away and let the operation work. Having a kid, having a child. I remember the first day we brought our daughter home. My wife and I were new, we just had a baby and we put her down right in the living room. We looked at each other, we're like, what are we doing next? There's no doctors and no nurses. Like, what are we going to do? And then now, 22 years later, she's still, she's okay, I guess.
Survived.
She survived.
Where's that owner's manual at, right? But you mentioned family. Family's, so important to framing one's identity and mindset. You came from a Vietnamese background. I want to kind of dig into that, that culture. If you can just discuss kind of what your family fled from and went through to get to the States and then being born in a refugee center.
So we lived in a small village in Vietnam, south of Saigon, which is Ho Chi Minh City now, called Vung Tau, and then Binh Da is a village. It's a small fishing industry. And during that time, we were the North Vietnamese before we moved down south. So in the North, we disagreed because Christianity, Buddhism, it's only the two religions, and the North didn't want any Christianity in Vietnam. So all the North went down south.
What years were that
this
time
was 75. Was really the 60s, the 60s, and then we left at 75. So in order for us to be able to leave Vietnam, my dad was fortunate to own a little radio. And that's how he was listening to the war, what was going on. There's a lot of disagreement. There's a lot of contentions going on during that time. And my dad orchestrated a boat for us to leave the inland if the Viet Cong would take over. And April 25th, 1975, midnight, my mom was 6 months pregnant with myself. So I was in my mom's belly. I wasn't even born yet, and I have 5 other siblings. And the oldest one was 13 years old, my oldest brother. And my youngest brother, the one next to me, he was a year older than I am. So he was only a year and some change. Wow. And so my dad orchestrated where, hey, when they come in, we got this boat, we got our family, we had relatives, go and get our grandparents and meet everybody on the boat. So my dad orchestrated all this, and we got on the boat. And unfortunately, one dropped the ball on grandma and grandpa, so they were left behind. And we left, and then all of a sudden, the Viet Cong was coming. That's how close it was. My sister would tell you, they didn't think they were going to survive. They were getting shot at, the grenades were thrown at them. So they got on the ship, and it backed the American ship up. So we couldn't get the connection out there in the water. So we were stranded out there for almost 2 weeks. So we floated in the China Sea, and then eventually ended on this land that we thought was America at first. They were saying that, but it was Thailand. So there in Thailand, we didn't have paperwork, so we were stuck on the boat for another day or two until we were identified that we're able to get on land. And so that's how we got to land in Thailand. And then a few weeks later, we flew to Camp Pennington out there in San Diego. And from Camp Pennington, we went to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And that's where the refugee camp that I was born at, and which we just celebrated 50 years this past year, this past summer.
So how'd your family end up settling in Rockport? Because they had that fishing background?
Well, it was, I didn't know. We assumed that for many years. And about 10 years ago, my mom really told us a story. So we were all in a refugee camp in Fort Chaffee, in Fort Smith, outside of Fort Smith. And the only way you'll know you get a sponsor, a family will take you in, is that they call you and you go to the church. And they said, when you get the call as a family to go to the church, that means you're just getting sponsored, and they're going to pray for you, and they're going to lead you on. So only way we could do was connection through letters, right? Phone numbers that we knew where we were going. So family were getting, Catholic Charity of America was sponsoring a lot of families, and they were sending them to Pennsylvania, back to California, to Florida, etc., South Texas. My family got sent to Kalamazoo, Michigan, up there almost by Ann Arbor. And so we were up there for 6 months. They gave us a 1970 Ford LTD. Mom stayed home with the 6 kids. Dad worked at the church. So he was doing work, but then I find out about 10, 12 years ago, my mom told the whole story, that my aunt, which is her sister-in-law, got stationed in Brownsville, Texas, but she passed away suddenly without knowing why, 6 months into coming to America. But they had 11 kids.
Whoa.
And mom's like, who's watching those kids? So Ford LTD, we load up the kids, all 8 people on the Ford LTD, 1970. And I don't know how my dad navigated from Michigan to the state of Texas.
Head south.
Head south. And then they went all the way to Rockport. We met in Rockport, and they came up from Brownsville. And now that's how they've been there for the whole life, 47, 48 years now that we've been there in Rockport. And remember that story I told you about Benda?
Yeah.
The little village of Saigon? So Benda translate is Port of Rock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's truly
ironic.
a God thing.
God, oh, amen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So cool. You know, one of the things that, from my experience from reading and observing, is that immigrant families have a great work ethic. Now, I know from reading about a lot of your story, your parents' phenomenal work ethic, that originally they didn't want you to play football. Right?
I came home, I broke my elbow in 8th grade. So that was the first time I was introduced to the game of football. I was introduced to the game, I had a junior high coach. He was an excellent coach. I was saying Cliff Davis. He played baseball at A&M. And he tried to play football for Bear Bryant and couldn't do it. So, but he played baseball, and then he got drafted by back then the Colt 45, which we turned into the Houston Astros. So he was in the organization for 20 years. So he comes back home. He loves fishing, so he went to the small town of Rockport to fish and to coach. And I had a typing class, and I was a good sized kid. I was about 5'8", 175 pounds for a Vietnamese kid, in 7th grade. So I had a class. The building was here, and the annex was here, and the field house was right across on the other side. So every day I had to go to the field house for the annex for my last period, and every day I would see Coach. For the whole week, he would just stand there. Come out and play. I want you to play football. Your brothers are playing, your uncles, your cousins are playing. Come on out and just give it a try. And he was persistent for about 3-4 days, and then at the end of the week, I told him, Coach, I'll come out. So I went out there, and first time I didn't realize there was hip pockets for for the belt loops for the hip pockets, pockets for the thigh pads. So all this was foreign to me, but that's how I got introduced to the game of football because of for Coach asked me to go out there and play. And he saw something in me. He obviously, but then I think it's just because of who we were, and as a group of kids. That my brother was playing good, and my brother wasn't even that big, and my brother was like 5'4". I'm here. He's really maxed out at 5'4". He's been 5'4" all his life. but he gave me a chance, and he thought I could be a good player, and that's how I got introduced to the game of football.
I read in a New York Times article what you talked about him, how he taught you the aspect of visualization.
Yes,
that concept.
yes. Oh.
You want to just share a little bit about the impact that had on your life?
So that was the first time. So he got me in 7th grade, and then in 8th grade was that fall was the first time I practiced football. So we had fall practice, and then we got ready for the first game. So we're getting ready for the game. So from the field house to the stadium, in between there is a gymnasium. So we're walking. This is small 3A football. You have 28 players, so there's not many players at all on our team. So we're walking to the field, knowing that hey, there's cheerleaders, there's parents, there's fans, and the opposing team, and all of a sudden here's a gymnasium on the left side. He goes, "Take that left," and we're like, "What? Take that left?" So we go in there. He goes, "Guys, put your helmet down and lay down, and close your eyes. Quarterbacks, I want to see yourself make the perfect pass for a first down. Running backs, I want to see yourself make the first guy miss. Linebackers, I want to see you make the tackle for loss. Defensive back, I want to see yourself make that PBU, pass broken up." So it goes through the process. Like, man, this guy's crazy, right? He's like, what are you doing? So we go out there and we play the game. And thank God, the following week, guess what he said? Walk into the field, from the field house to the stadium, take that left. So we went in the left. I put my helmet down. I was 14 years old, Chad. Right. So I put my helmet down, and I put my helmet down and I laid down. I was like, with 28 players, you got to play both ways. I was like, damn, I saw myself making that first guy miss last week. I saw myself make that tackle for loss. And I was like, wow. And I can tell you, I did it every game from 8th grade on, all the way through high school, and I got to A&M, and people always say, hey, why are you so instinctive? How did you see that? I say, I saw that play last night. I saw it in my head. I saw it in my mind already. So the game, obviously we talked about slowing down the game. That helps you instead of, everybody talks about if you react in a game, in a football game, you're beat. All right? No, I'm sorry. If you think you beat, right. It's a reaction game. You got to go. And that allowed me to play faster. We played it. It's not a guessing game, but it's an anticipation game. And then as we get on, we talk about the game slows down. Now you're talking about frequency and all that stuff that's added, tendencies, and et cetera. But visualization really has helped me even to this day. Every day, if I have a meeting, if I had things I had to do, I visualized before because you just got to go through because you never know. Because I always tell people that our sales, I speak to a lot of salesmen out there, and they said, hey, if you don't have an answer for a why, you ain't going to sell the product because they're going to ask you. You know what I mean? It's not easy. So you have to put yourself in a situation to have to answer all the whys. But it's been unbelievable to my life and my career. And I would say out of all the things in my life, that might be singularly the number one reason the success that I have in my life, from business to athletics.
Pretty big statement. Yeah. You know, just the aspect of taking mental reps where you then have that muscle memory from that because everything starts up here
yes,
first.
Sir. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. I mean, I get that. We do the same thing like in the Air Force. We'd call it chair flying.
Yeah. Practice
for missions. And I was very fortunate too that my mom taught me the aspects of visualization when I was in junior high too. I have brothers from a different mother, man. I'm telling you, there's a lot of commonality with that. But that's a powerful statement that you wouldn't be where you're at today unless you grasp that concept of visualization.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's funny. I told Coach Lou Holtz. I spoke to him a few months back, and we were talking about visualization, and he said that they did that at Notre Dame. Those years with Tim Brown and all those guys when they were good, they made it. There was a thing that he calls it. They might Google it, but he was like, when I told him about the visualization, he struck back and he's like, oh my Lord, that's what we did at Notre Dame from 1986 to 1992, and that's all they did. They did the same thing as a group, to just sit back, close your eyes, and just visualize.
And it's such a simple concept, but it is so powerful.
Yes, sir.
It's so powerful. The mental reps. You talked about your coach. We kind of talked about work ethic of your parents. Any other influences that you had in your life early on that you give credence to that helped you to get to be the man that you are today?
Chad, I think that's so much in life. Like I sit back and I don't have enough thank yous. I don't think I have enough thank yous from high school coaches to college coaches, because you always talk about the head coach, right? We always talk about the head coach, the main guy. But there are so many guys that set the example, how they were taking care of their family, how they were treating their wife, all this stuff. As a young kid, you're just absorbing all this stuff and you watch. And obviously Phil Bennett was a big part of my life there at A&M. When I got to A&M, and nobody knows the story, when I got to A&M, I wasn't a highly recruited A&M kid, but he embraced it. He cooked me in, and his wife, Nancy, now she has passed, but they embraced me in and accepted me and taught me how to be family. And we were family, obviously. We have gathering and etc. But this was more of an intentional. It teaches more intentional. The other one's more of a structure, more of a relationship, more of just the culture.
Sure.
We sit every Sunday. We come together. We have a feast. We family sit and talk. But this time, like Coach Bennett talks about, hey, you have to be more intentional in life and teaching, reaching out to other people, and as things as you think is as bad. Because I was a redshirt freshman. You know what I mean? If the transfer portal was as easy as it is now, I might not have made it through Texas A&M. But Coach gave me a chance to realize, hey, it's okay. There's a reason why you're here. And he said, academic is number one, athletic is two. And I didn't want to hear that as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old recruit or a assignee. And because you want to come and you want to play. But I think there's so many coaches in my life. I can go down the list of Mike Coleman, Clay Rosenbaum, that's just some of my high school coaches, Puckett, Rotzler. Well, it just goes on, and I tell people all the time though, the impact of education, administration, was the biggest part. I think besides mom and dad, 1 and 2, in most influential person in my life, 3 to 20 has to be all coaches and administration people through my career.
I would say probably the same thing.
Yeah.
In my experience too. It's a powerful statement that you made. Even as a young man, you were observant in the fact that you were watching people. Not only did they talk the talk, but did they walk the walk per se. And that's a great reminder for all of us that we truly are all role models.
Yes.
That there are people watching you, how you conduct yourself, not just the words you say, but the actions that you take.
Yeah.
That's a powerful testimony.
Yeah.
Very powerful testimony.
It's crazy to go back to that, just like going to church, right? When I was at A&M, I didn't have to go to church. I was just on my own. I was a student athlete, but going to church, you go to church and you see Coach, Tim Cassidy, his wife Nancy, and their kids, and they sit in the pew next to you, and it just teaches you that this is how you do it. This is what you do on Sundays. Even though football is football. But John Thornton was the other guy who was the assistant AD for us for many years. He was a great example for me. So it goes down the list. John, I can just go down. But there's so many guys, like you're right, that impacted us or myself, because I was just observant and willing to see what is the right thing to do. Like everything said, the right and wrong. No. At 18, I don't know what was right and wrong. I do, but not to an extent of, hey, what your growth of progress, a progression in your life, what's going to be the next 10 years of your life. If you look at a coach, that's what's going to be, family, kids, it's pretty cool.
So that sounds, somewhat that you're taking aspects of, setting goals along with that. Is that part of the things you took from these guys too, as other than, visualization from your middle school coach?
Yeah.
Modeling for what it's like, but are there any other, I would say, tangible takeaways on leadership, how you honed who you were as a leader on the field?
I think it's obviously, you always got to prove yourself, meaning that you never arrived. And I think that's the biggest part for me, was that I always was scared or nervous or had a mindset that someone's going to beat me out. And you're one injury away. I don't know, the story about how I got to play at A&M. So what's interesting was that I think that really helped me realize to not take things for granted when I were in the position as a freshman at A&M. When my first day at A&M, we got into an auditorium. We call it Kane Hall, and that's when all the signees, the new signees comes in, and there's about 26, 27 of us, and Coach Slocum, everybody introduce everybody. Because, back then, Facebook, Instagram, none of the social media stuff was there, so you kind of get some newspaper clippings here and there, and I think there was like one website that really shows you who's what and a little bit of story about the top players. So I go into this auditorium, or Kane Hall, and I'm introducing myself. Hey, I'm Dad, and introduce myself to the other players. You could be your teammates, might be your brothers for the rest of your life, right, brother? This is a team now, and linebacker. Hey, I'm linebacker. I'm like, we signed 26, 27 players. There's 4 other linebackers, and I'm the 5th one. I was like, what? There's 5 of us? And I was like, holy smoke. We played the traditional, famous 3-4 defense wrecking crew. 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, and there's 5 of us. One of us is not going to play. And unfortunately, I came from a small school, wasn't ready to play, was the only one that redshirted out of the Fab. We call it the Fab Five, then right after Chris Webber and those guys up in Michigan. So we call it the Fab Five, and I can tell you, that was the hardest year of my life, of my athletic career. You were the highest high. You come from a small town of less than 10,000 people. You get a full scholarship to the University of Texas A&M, and everybody told you all summer, you're the best thing since sliced bread. And then you show up, and here's 4 other players that are extremely better than you are. And plus, there was another 80 players. I was on scholarship that were all district, all region, all state, all American, whatever their accolades were. So it was the bottom of the bottom. And that was my career, and I think I could easily fold at that time. And it goes back to Cliff Davis. I made a trip back to Rockport right before the football season started that year. After 2 days, we went back and I said, Coach, I'm not happy. I don't think I'm ever play at Texas A&M. And that's when he came back and he said, you better make football number 2. They're paying for your education, get the education. That's a piece of paper you're eventually going to keep for the rest of your life. And one thing I remember, he said, your athletic ability one day will decline. We don't know when it's going to be, but it will decline. And I went back to A&M, I went to class, and I was like, dude, I don't want to hear this, man. And I go back and I made a pat and promised Coach that I will go back to make school number 1. And 6 o'clock in the morning, I would work out at the weight room. 8 o'clock, I would go to class. I come back at 12 and work out again. And I came back at 4 and worked out again 3 times a day for the whole year. My redshirt freshman year, I would work out 3 times a day for one opportunity just to play. And I knew I was going to be a backup to one of those 4 guys because I didn't play. And in that following spring, I worked myself up all the way up to be a backup to one of the linebackers, which the best linebacker out of that class, out of those 5, he was the number 1 rated in the state of Texas. Defense Player of the Year in the state of Texas. And I said, okay, he'll be here for another 2 years, maybe 3 years. If my senior year, I get a chance to be leading the wrecking crew. In the meantime, I'll just play special teams and contribute as of the next 3 years. That was my whole mindset. And we were about to play LSU, the first game of the season, on that Wednesday, leading up to the first game. Coach Slocum said, get on the line, let's run sprints. So ran sprints back, forth, back, forth. The guy that was starting in front of me steps on the sprinkler head, twists his ankle, and can't play. That was my career. That's how
you got the chance. You're ready to roll.
And that was it. And I would never. That's why I was like, I couldn't do anything to lose that opportunity because I knew I worked so hard for that opportunity.
You know, and that's just one thing I want to maybe peel back the layers of the onion a little bit here. Is you mentioned something that you always kind of play on edge. You're never satisfied, but that aspect, it's walking a fine balance because if you're on that edge, you can experience the anxiety, the stress, the fear, but also being on that edge where you can have peace, where you could say, whatever the outcome is, it will be what will be. How did you maintain that balance without? Because I look back at my life, and there were times where it's like, you're always on the edge, constant improvement, you're never satisfied, but yet with that aspect, that drive of wanting to be the best causes anxiety. Causes a lot of other emotional things where it can hurt relationships, but how were you able to maintain that balance? For over 50 years, JT Clothiers has been a respected family-owned clothing store for men and ladies in Denton, Texas. Whether you're looking for the perfect suit, an elegant top, or unique accessories, JT's offers a personalized shopping experience. The staff not only remembers your name, but also takes the time to understand your style, ensuring you always walk out with something you love. JT Clothiers carries world-class brands from around the globe, bringing you the best in fashion from far and wide. Whether you're shopping for work, play, or something in between, they got you covered. Conveniently located on the corner of Oak and Elm in historic downtown Denton, JT Clothiers is a must-visit destination. Stop by, support local, and let them know you came from Forces of Character podcast to receive 10% off your first purchase. Head over to JT Clothiers today, where timeless style meets personalized service.
I think that's that might have been the hardest thing because I tell people all the time, I wish I would just slow down just a little bit during that time that we were playing. It goes by fast because you're focused up, it's scheduled, right? You're like, hey, I gotta get better, what you were talking about. But I think for me, during that time, how did I balance that? I think it's just that I knew my weaknesses or my constraints in certain areas of my life where, hey, I'm not the fastest guy. I'm not the strongest guy. What are my strengths? How can I use that? And what I can do to make it better? So mind game, visualization, understanding the game of football, understanding the concept. Those are all things that I think it factors in to help that knowing that every day you don't physically have to work to get to be the hardest you do. Like we lift weights, we do all that stuff. Yes, that's part of it. But I think you're never maxing out. You always got to do something to work your mind and your body to just put yourself in the position to be successful. And I think for me, with that injury to that linebacker, for me to get a chance, I knew that my chance could be any time. And then if I lose it, then it wasn't meant to be, or my time is done. And I was at peace with that because I wasn't supposed to be there. You know, I was like, I wasn't supposed to be in America. I shouldn't be playing the game of football. And I think that's all those stuff that just.
Looking back on it now, you realize that. But then, did you have that philosophy, that mindset?
I don't think so. I think I was just, hey, all go.
Yeah.
And I think
You're
it's
in the
just,
mix of it.
Yeah. And I think it's just that it was just that because you have to go because, as we know, in the national, especially the National Football League, on Tuesday, Wednesday, you walk out there and across the field, we got another linebacker. Is he getting my job? Did I play that bad? You know what I mean? Because you always you always think if you miss a tackle or you give up a touchdown, man, that's the end of the world. Right, that's a good chance that if there's a linebacker, then he might be coming in to take your position, and I think that motivates you a little bit more, work a little bit harder, whatever it is, and then you trying to be perfectionist, and I think that's how we were. Like I think we drive. We know we're not going to be perfection, and it's not going to be a perfect game, but we drive for that, and I think that's the drive that we have in the mindset. Even though all you know that you can just give you 100%, 110%, and that's what you can do in everything that you do through the process. But I think that's the only anxiety that I had, I think, was that if I was going to lose this opportunity.
Yeah.
And
you're gonna do, it's that aspect of like living excellence, being your best self today. You may not have your A game every day, but you're going to go out there and you're going to give the best version of yourself there.
Yeah.
We talk about providence. The destiny that your legacy of walking it out of, family fleeing Vietnam, born in refugee camp, how you made it to Rockport, the impact Coach Davis had on your life. You're at A&M, playing football. You weren't supposed to play football. You look back and you're able to see that providence now. But to your point, when you're in the thick of it, the experiences is what give you that wisdom and that aspect of going through it.
Yeah.
But we have the benefit now to share those life experiences with others. But now as a Christian too, I look back on my life. Brothers from a different mother.
Yeah.
I'm listening to your story, but it's the providential aspects of what we went through. Kind of was meant to be, but we had to show up. You had to walk it out. You still had to go through that aspect of the valley, the hilltops, life, but you had to show up every day and put forth your effort.
Yeah.
And what will be, will be.
Yeah.
Want to comment anything on that?
No, I think that's exactly. You're right. That's the only thing that you could really do. Because I go back and I think we have so many good coaches. You have so many good quotes, right? And you always get some from them. Say, hey, you can only control what you can control.
Right.
Right. And I think that's also one of the things that I was taught at RC. I think Coach Loco is the one that always tells us that. It's like, hey, control what you can control. Don't worry about the things outside, and don't worry about the guy next to you. You can't worry about what he does. You hope that he does his job, but do your job and do your job to the best. And I think that's the perspective in life, right? Is that control. We can't worry about all the noise or whatever is going on. It's like, hey, I can take care of myself and take my family. I think we still live that life on a daily basis.
Yeah, amen. And I appreciate, when we talk about mindset early on that you got and how the experiences you had gave you that aspect that you need to be intentional.
Yeah.
Intentionality is the key. Control what you control. And be intentional.
Yeah.
Want to kind of shift gears here a little bit. You're the captain of the wrecking crew. As that middle linebacker, you're the captain on the field. I mean, you're calling the plays, you're making sure everybody's in the positions, run or pass. You're the guy. So as a leader, how did you develop that leadership style, and how would you describe your leadership style regarding others. And I want to get to something. And where does that start?
Yeah, so I think leadership is just different for everybody. There's so many different leaders. Leaders can be so different in different ways. And I think there's vocal leaders. We had vocal leaders on our team. I didn't have to fill that void. That guy's still doing it right now up in Detroit. He was on vocal lead. Dan Campbell was there. So he did all that for us. But I was more just an example. And I was really the guy that's really glue everybody together. I'm not saying I was the glue, but I was, Asian, and you had African American, you had Hispanic, you had Caucasian, you had different nationalities. So I was the one that's an odd man out, but I brought everybody together. I felt like it was cool. Like, we did stuff outside of football that we hung out. We did stuff together where a whole team would do. We would have after spring football every year. Hey, come to Dad's place, and we would hang out. But I think leadership is it's just always trying to help somebody else. I think that's from my mom. Always trying to figure out what's the purpose of helping or assisting or enriching another life. And that was now, but back then, for the wrecking crew, I was just trying to get guys lined up. And I think the respect that I had, the way I play, and I don't know, I think it's just that, I think the effort is the reason why a lot of those guys respected or listened to what I had to say. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm not a raw guy. I was never that guy, but I was just, you're almost like a quarterback, right? You're the quarterback of the defense, just like many quarterbacks of the offense. You just got to get guys that are, and I think I learned a lot from, at A&M I had five position coaches in 5 years. I don't know if anybody knew that story, but I had three defensive coordinators, and was Tommy Tuberville my first year, and then Phil Bennett for 2 years, and Mike Hankwitz as a defensive coordinator for me for 2 years, and then a position coach. It was Tommy Tuberville, Phil Bennett, Mike Hankwitz, and then Alan Waddell. So I had four position coaches in 5 years. But I think it allows me to learn from those guys to, hey, John over here, he's a little bit lacking a little bit of confidence. Hey, give him a little pat in the butt. Just always, and then, hey, this guy, don't yell at him. So I think you look to read people, who can take it and who can't, and who needs encouragement and who doesn't. So I think that at that young age, you can see that with some of the guys, because we had a lot of guys, because my first year, I was a freshman or redshirt freshman. I'm playing with, all these seniors and juniors that are way more experienced than I am. And then as I went on, I think that's how, as a junior and senior, the game slowed down. Now it's your role, right? We had guys that we try to imitate, the Rodney Thomas, who is now not with us anymore, but Reggie Brown was a great linebacker. Keith Mitchell was an excellent. So we had great players at A&M that I had a chance to look up to as a young player. And then when it was my turn to be that role, and I think it's just the ladder. You just follow the ladder. You just go through the process of being it. And I don't know, I have a way of leadership. I think it's just that I just enjoy trying to see people succeed and have, obviously you want success selfishly too, but you want other guys, that if other guys do well and have success on the field individually, guess what? The whole group get the big victory, or the big prize.
Well, and I know that you have, by example, because you said we all have a tendency to kind of watch others, and if you're walking the walk, you set the example. Mm-hmm. And you reminded me, I have this thing that I share with people regarding living a life of excellence, kind of what that means. Yes. When you're in your teens and your 20s, you're that freshman on the team. Yeah. You're the rookie, where you're just trying to learn the offense, learn the defense, figure it out, trying to make the team, right?
Yes.
But then when you get to your 30s and your 40s, then you become what you just described, that upperclassman, where you're taking care of the others. You realize that your success is dependent upon theirs. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
And now when you're approaching, I just turned 60, man, and I know
you're 50.
10 years behind. Yeah. That when you're in your 50s and your 60s, then you become like the coach, where it's what you're probably doing with your Chick-fil-A franchise now is elevating those players. You've been there, done that with your life experiences. Yeah. So it's setting the example. And one of the things that kind of diving deeper into that experience of leadership is kind of what you do in the off season in the weight room. I don't know if you recall, like when the Cowboys, when we would do our individual grass drills in the off season, you know, setting the tone. You had a couple, I don't know if there was your class that came in. It was a linebacker, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he'd be perpetually late coming out for the grass drills, right, with Joe. And at one point in time, where we'd stretch as a team, you know, in like the morning workouts, and then you go do whatever it was that we were going to do for the individual grass drills. And this kid kept putting in late. And finally, I told him, man, get your butt back in there. You're not going to work out. You're going to wait for the next time because, you know, setting the tone, setting the example.
Yes.
You know, I just think about experiences like that, you know, that we try to translate to you guys of that, you know, doing the little things right has an impact on the field on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? And from a leadership perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
So those tangible things. And I know what you did in the weight room, because I know you're voracious to get as big as what you did with your frame. You had, and you talked about working out three times a day. Is you had to set the tone. And people see that, and people notice that. And that's what I want people to realize, is that it's not necessarily the words that you say, because I know you're not a very vocal guy. You're not the Michael Irvin of that, or a Dan Campbell. But your actions speak louder than your words. And people want to follow that because they see there's something different in you. And I would bet that, man, that goes all the way back to your parents.
Oh, for sure. I think that's that's the only way, really, our culture. Like, you really, like even my parents, obviously, they always worked and they put their head down, and you know what I mean, and they just keep, you know, just pounding it. You know, one foot, put the right foot in front of the left foot, and just keep going every day. And I think that's where I learned it from. Is just that the work ethic is because of them, obviously. But I think as you grow older, like you go through the stage of our age, and now you see our friends and our family that we grew up with. You know what I mean? Because everybody go through, it was hard times. You know, you think about coming over here with nothing, you know, and trying to learn another language, and obviously have multiple kids. And I don't know, I would have done it. My dad was 30 years old when he came over, and I was like, well, I would have done the same thing at 30 years old. You know, as clever as he was, as orchestrated, all that stuff that he did, like, that was freaking unbelievable. And driving from Michigan to Texas, like, how in the world, 6 months in America, how did you do that? That was more, you know, that was even more bizarre, but it's unbelievable. But it's just that they figured out, like, hey, I'll solve that problem. And I think that's part of my life. I think it's almost like I enjoy that. I think I go to work, that's what I enjoy, because there's always stuff that happens, you know, at Chick-fil-A, and you like to solve problems. You make things a little bit better, and that's my vision at the store. You know what I mean? Honor God is to enrich every life that we touch, and that's all it is at Chick-fil-A. And I say, hey, we're enriching all the customers. We make all the meals. We acknowledge the customers, so we're enriching their life. And guess what? That we enrich other people, meaning our team members and our leaders that are on the team. So that's kind of cool for me. I was like,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, just again, you allude to a point. I saw a little video vignette the other day that talked about the number one determinant of whether a person was going to be a success in life was grit. Your folks, I mean, showed grit for doing that. You showed grit. I mean, it's just that aspect of work ethic and figuring it out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how smart you are, how athletic you are.
Yes.
It was grit. And you could probably look back on former teammates.
Oh, Chad, I tell people all the time, I wasn't the best player on my high school football team, even though I was second team punter. But I had a running back, Chad. He was 5'9", 5'10", 180 pounds, 190 pounds, ran a 4.3, never picked up a weight in his life, chiseled. And we played one game we played. And he was a running back, obviously. He was a tailback. He gets the ball on just a lead play. And he stops because the pile, there's no hole. And guess what he did? He just jumps over the pile and stopped running. And I was like, this is unbelievable. But obviously he made some bad decisions. But then they had another running back that was better than I am. They had a left tackle that went to a Division I at Texas Tech and played. So we had 3 other players that were way better than I was. And you know, I had a quarterback that blew his hip out. He was in 9th grade, 8th grade. He ran into, you know how we used those Gatorade tables, the folder tables. So he ran to the side and got pushed and hit the table and broke his hip. And that was the brother of the kid that jumped over the pile. And he would have been a great quarterback. He would have been very successful. football player, but unfortunately with the hip. But I wasn't the best player on my team, on my high school football team. And so for me to have a chance, and I said it just, I guess I know God opened a lot of doors, and I just got lucky.
Well, and you showed up. And that's very reminiscent of what I've read about Michael Jordan's career, too. He wasn't even the best player in his high school. He got cut, I think.
Yeah, JV, yeah.
Before he made it. Yeah. And it's just so grit and determination. Who's big impact for you or big influence for you when you play for the Cowboys?
Oh man!
Take that both as a player and as a coach.
As a player and as a coach. Well, I think there's so many. I think I tell people all the time, from you guys when we got to the Cowboys, obviously, it was a dream opportunity. You know, growing up in South Texas, learning the game of football, coming to Texas A&M, and playing professionally in the Lone Star State, all 3 levels. It was pretty cool, pretty awesome. But I tell people I get a chance to meet the Bob Lilly of the world, the Randy White of the world, that generation with Top Landry. They're just so class act, and it goes down to where you guys, when I first got in with you guys, you guys were so good to us, so to me when I got there. And I remember Darren Woodson came, and Woody said, "Hey, Dad," because he was a safety at Arizona State. I'm sorry, a linebacker converted to a safety, and I was no way gonna be a safety, but he came up to me, first day he met me, and he says, "Dad, I love the way you play the game of football. Congratulations. Just remember, you'll be a former player longer than you'll be a player." And I was like,
why did you tell me that?
Yeah, I was like, so it stuck with me until that off season, because everything was so fast, and I was like, dang, what are you talking about? I'll be a former player longer than I'll be a player. And I was like, oh shoot. Then I realized, damn, I played 7 years and I've been out 18 years now. Like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like everybody, it's like you'll be a former player. Not many people play 40, even when you play 40. Eventually, if you live to be over your, in 20 years, they live over the 40 and 45 years, you'll be a former player, right? Longer than you'll be a player. And I think that really helps me a lot when I got to the Cowboys to realize that it's more of a business. And it's not, yes, the competition, playing every week, you're playing with the world's greatest athletes, some of the world's greatest athletes against and with. I tell people about Prime all the time. He might be he's the one that really taught me how to watch film, understanding route combination, because on that Thursday he would get the remote after practice and we were sitting there and just watch third downs, and he taught me a lot about the game and understanding being a professional. But there's so many guys. Dexter Coakley was a big part of my 6 years with him here, and without him I wouldn't have made it the first couple of years, just because he the way he carried himself and how he learned and how he was just so organized and understanding, hey, this is how you're supposed to do it, and the steps and process of being a professional at the high level. And but coaches, Coach E, obviously, Coach George Edward was a big part. As they come in, Dave Campbell, Mike Zimmer, all those guys were big. And I've been on, even Gary Gibbs. Gary Gibbs was a linebacker coach late in my career, and even Coach Bill Parcells. I learned so much about him, about the game of football. I thought I knew football, all the time we did, but no, just the game of football, and just as ruthless or as hard as he was, as people assume or he sees from the outside. But man, that's the most genuine person I think I've met. And and we text back. Yeah, we text back and forth quite a bit still, and I guess I got into that little circle that he has, but I learned so much, Chad. I can go not even the coaches and players, even the Jones family. How great they don't have to do what they do for all of us to help us in a certain situation in life and time, and they're just they love the game of football and they love helping people, and I couldn't ask for a better organization to be a part of, and for your guidance and being a friend that had helped during that time. And you didn't have to, when you went through your career, you already won Super Bowls. I tell people, I was like, dude, Chad didn't have to tell a little rookie, hey, the game's gonna slow down. Don't worry, the little fella. so I remember that bus ride. I was like, dude, I don't think I was going to the game. I was sweating. I was like, oh, my hands I was like, man, golly, it's like. Because I don't know who we were playing the second game. I think that team was already been a good football team, because Cleveland wasn't that they were just coming back that year. Yeah, the inaugural year at the Cleveland Browns were bringing them back, and I was like, golly. I remember Chad told me, he looked at me, he goes, maybe the game was slowed down. I was like, Oh, thank God.
Change gears here. You made several transitions in life. Now, how did the transition from playing in the NFL, to the corporate world? Because you've done different things through media, and kind of describe that path, regarding lessons learned, how you were able to take lessons from being an athlete to now in the corporate boardroom.
The transition, I think nobody realized how difficult that transition is as a player to become a former player. That first 6 months, maybe that first year, I think for everybody, I don't know how yours was, but mine was very difficult, just because I think everything we did from high school to college to professional was structured, was scheduled. Hey, you got to be here at this time. You got to show up. You know what I mean? So that you were told what to do for so long. And then all of a sudden, hey, you wake up in the morning, you're done with football, playing professionally, you wake up and your wife had her own schedule and you try to go in, you're like, no. She's like, oh, hey, I've been doing this for X amount of years. This is my system. You don't tweak my stuff. And so you had to adjust and adapt. And I think, be also the spotlight. I think you get recognition. You go and people know you are. Then all of a sudden, like nobody knows really. Hey, you become irrelevant. It's kind of interesting how it was hard for me just because I like, what is my next step? I know I want to do business. I want to do stuff and I have dreams and I think that's allowed me to see different aspects. And I wanted to coach football. That's what I really wanted to do. And I was fortunate to got on staff with the Cowboys and was there for 3 seasons and I learned a lot and it was great. And I thought, well, I always wanted, my heart was always going back to college and to help collegiate kids. The inner city kids or the kids that didn't have much to come to get a great education and play at a high level and maybe potentially make it to the National Football League. And that was my big goal, going down to A&M, become a defensive, a linebacker coach and defensive coordinator, and then maybe become a head coach one day. And that was going to be it. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. You realize pretty quickly there's people that make decisions in football that never played, and it's hard because I was seeing it from the inside where the head coach was impacting all these kids. 120 players, 80 scholarship players. Every meeting, beginning of the year, he would say, 10 of you guys or 12 of you guys stand up, and everybody would look at him and goes, that's the percentage that will make it to the National Football League. If you're not one of those 10 or 12, you better get your books. You better take care of their education. And he was great about that and of giving those guys a chance, an opportunity to realize that reality is that, it is your goal. That should be your goal. You should reach for that goal. But guess what? There's a good chance that you're not going to get that goal.
Right, amen.
So I thought when I got done there, when we were let go, I was like, oh man, I don't know. I want to cart my wife around the country every few years, man. The profession, college football coaching is hard. It's tough. You're on the road a lot, you're recruiting kids, and you're away from your family. And I was like, man, I think God has bigger plans. And so we moved down south. I did radio. When I was walking in the studio here, I was like, man, it's been a long time since I've been in the studio. I walked around. But I did radio. I love the radio. I think God had a plan for me because I think when I was playing and I was college or professionally, I wasn't a great speaker. Like I didn't really talk well. And obviously, I wasn't the greatest academically in school. Everybody assumed that I was, but I really wasn't. But I think that radio forced me to read, forced me to do a lot of stuff that I didn't want to do, and got away with it, and had to do. Hey, you got to speak 3 hours on the radio, man. We got to have a conversation. We got to talk. We got to tell stories. You got to paint this picture, whatever it is. So you got to think of all these ideas what I had to do to be a good radio personality. So I did it for 3 years, and I remember I was doing the drive time in San Antonio, and one day I was driving back, and it's about a 30-minute drive from my house to the studio, and I was like, dang, I think God has a bigger plan for me. Like, what is it? And I keep thinking back. I was like, I was thinking about my mom, because we had a restaurant, and I was like, gosh, she impacted, because I really want to coach football, and she impacted all my cousins that work for my family or relatives that work for us, and the employees. Like, that's what I want to do. And I started doing some research, and Chick-fil-A keep coming up. Chick-fil-A. And I was like, man, I think I fit Chick-fil-A. And all of a sudden, so I said, I'll apply for Chick-fil-A and see what happens. And all of a sudden, bam, 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 and all this stuff. The process went on, and it was very thorough. It was a long process, but dang, when it went pretty quickly, and I was like, golly, it's pretty remarkable. So the last almost 10 years now, Chad, I've been doing Chick-fil-A, and I don't think I ever think of my day that I wake up that I had to go to work, you know, from college to professionally to now, even the radio, even coaching football. I don't think I ever see it as at work. I think it's an opportunity to go help somebody.
Yeah.
You know, there's a purpose of your life, and I think that's the calling. All that stuff that was set up of impacting people in college and professionally as a coach. You went to do radio. That kind of give you a step, and now you're speaking in front of groups all the time because I'm speaking to all my team members or my team leads or gathering all the time. So we're meeting all the time. So now you can speak and you talk to them. So it's been a fun ride for me the last 10 years with Chick-fil-A. But overall, I don't know. I played A&M, played for the Cowboys, and own a Chick-fil-A. It's like, dang, that's pretty dang. That's pretty good
awesome.
life.
Amen. I think it's obvious that faith and family has been a big part of your life. And how do you and Becky, you know, with your family, your kids, manage that aspect of balance?
Yeah.
Managing the celebrity status, you know, your faith, your work balance, and yet still time for family, for kids.
Yeah.
Because I remember texting you back and forth, and you said, "Man, sorry, I can't get back to you. I'm fishing with my boys." You know, I'm like, "Good for you."
Yeah.
Number one. So how do you maintain that, and is it a struggle?
I think it's the season of life. I think it's always going to be a balance. You have to balance. I think that's the most important thing. You can work, but something's gonna be off balance, right? Like, so I'm always big on. I think football really helped when being a professional athlete. When you're out there for 6-8 months grinding, and then all of a sudden, and then you play the season. It's for 4 or 5 months, whatever, and then now you're off. So now you spend time with family. But it just changes the way where, for me, faith is going to be number one. I grew up Catholic. I don't practice, you know, that faith anymore. I'm all Bible, Bible church. But it's for me. I think my example for my parents, how church was just a big part. That's not an option.
Right.
You have to attend during that time. And I think the difference is that they set it up for us where now we have an option to attend, which we do. And now we give that chance to realize, hey, Sundays, I don't care where you're at, you got to go to church. So that's the number one thing. But two, I think my faith, balance, and time, I think those are the big parts. I think faith is always number one. My wife, Becky's number two, obviously, after Jesus and God. But for me, it seems like, you know, it's always a balance. You got to, because it's always a struggle. It's always a challenge. If you're a Christian, if you say you're a Christian, man, or you believe in Jesus Christ, hey, man, you didn't get persecuted. Like everywhere you go, right? You got to be bold. And I think that's. I'm not saying that. Hey, I'm going out there. You tell me I believe in Jesus Christ? Yes, I do. And I know He's my Lord and Savior. I know He died on the cross for me. All my sins are forgiven. And one day I will. He have a mansion. He has a room for me at His mansion. You know. So, but I hope that my kids and thank God that I have 2 sets of kids. Even at the first, I don't know. I was really happy. We had 2 kids, and then we had one 6 years later, which is a Finley, and then I got twin boys. I wanted a boy at the end, and God gave me 2 boys, and I was like, wow, we have 5 kids, and now we have kids at 20 all the way to 10. So it's a big gap of 12 years of having kids. So, but I think it really has helped us to see the older girls when they go off to college. Hey, they could be hanging out with their friends on Sunday or don't go to church, and guess where they are? They're at church. And so we feel like that's one thing that we made that they understood, that knowing that, hey, you got to show up and go to church and be a part of a church. And two, knowing that family. It's like, all we're going to have is each other. Like we always talk about this, is at the end of the day, you know, you're just going to have your family. You have friends, you have everybody. Yes, we do. All brotherhood, our friends at the Cowboys, our friends at A&M, you're going to have them. But in the day, it's your family. And that's all you're going to have. And we always tell them. And now my 2 boys and my daughter, they're always bickering, all 3 of those little kids. And I was like, guys, you're going to have each other. Because we always got to say, please don't fight. Hey, you got to get along, because eventually you guys have to get along. But it's been my life with faith, and I think I've grown a lot. like my faith. I accepted Jesus Christ in 1999, right before the Cowboys. So I was a rookie, and we were staying at the extended stay down there in Los Colinas in Irving, and I had a couch, a bed, and a TV back in College Station at my apartment, and my high school my shop teacher was a chaplain, and he went to Dallas Seminary here in Dallas. And so we had a weekend off before we had to go to training camp. And I called Coach, it was July 2nd, 1999. I called Mr. Bailey, which we call Coach Bailey, and I called Mr. Bailey, can I borrow your Ford Ranger, which is the little Ford Ranger, that's little.
Sure.
So I said, I need to borrow a truck, I need to get a U-Haul, I gotta go pick up my stuff in College Station. I don't have a truck. He goes, hey, I'm not doing it, can I come with you? I go, yeah, come on. So we drove it's about 3.5 hours, 3:15. So we drove down, so he talked about Jesus the whole way. All the way down, we loaded up the truck, we came back with a U-Haul. He talked about Jesus again for the next 3.5 hours, and that was the day that I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Awesome.
So that's the day that we always remember. I was born again on that day.
You know, it's just hearing, listen to you speak, it's regarding how you talked about playing on the edge when we were coming up as a professional, you know, with now establishing that between that anxiety and being at peace. And that's kind of the same way when you struggle for that balance in life. It is a struggle. You're never going to arrive. It's never a destination. It's a journey.
Yes.
It's a process. Yes. And you always have to have some of that little bit of that edge on you. You know, typically I close with the aspect of asking you, but I think you nailed it pretty well here of identity. Who are you? You know, for those in the audience, just as a reminder, I ask identity is that filter that you pass your thoughts, your words, and your experiences through that provide, you know, meaning and impact.
Yes.
In other words, you know, it's you know, who are you? And I think you nailed it right there with you said it here as a son of God.
Amen.
And then as a husband and a father then too. But brother, I thank you. Thank you for being here.
It's almost over. It's over.
Hey, we're there.
What?
We're almost, we are done.
Yeah,
And I'm going to wind this down, but thank you again for being on.
It's my pleasure, yes.
For those of you guys who like what you see here, follow me on social media or go to my website, chadhennings.com, to learn more about what we're trying to do with Forces of Character. Until then, go out and truly be a force of character. Take care.